Hi there and welcome to my presentation, which discusses how I'm going to implement my key concept, global citizenship, within my chosen education sector context via teaching strategies. First of all, before we begin, I'd like to apologize for the unorthodox way of filming my presentation. Due to technical issues, I wasn't able to record my voice on PowerPoint. And I also, due to that issue, won't be able to record myself visually, so my apologies for that. Anyway, let's continue with my presentation. So my key concept is global citizenship. The education sector context, okay, so this would be a state secondary school located in Western Melbourne. And the year level that I'll be engaging with via the teaching of this concept is a year 7 class. So it's quite a multicultural class. There would be around at least 7 to 8 different cultural backgrounds present in the class. At this year level, students will be starting to undertake study in subjects like history, geography, civics and citizenship, and economics and business. So global citizenship, the way that I envisage teaching it in this assignment and for this presentation, would be as a way that is integrated and implemented into each of these subjects and not taught separately. So as we move on, I'm just going to give a little bit of background info on global citizenship as it is already taught within Australia. So nationwide civics and citizenship classes do teach global citizenship as a component of the discipline. So you can find elements of this concept within civics and citizenship classes around Australia. And in addition, Victoria implements this concept via the FISO model, the framework for improving student outcomes. So my approach though, it's not, as I've mentioned before, to teach the concept separately. It's to integrate global citizenship aspects into separate disciplines alongside everyday teaching activities and content that would naturally occur within these disciplines. So, going further into the way that I would like to implement my concept, I have broken up global citizenship into 5 main components, which are diversity, sustainable development, globalization and interdependence, peace and conflict, and social justice and equity. So each of these 5 components will be assigned to one of the 4 previously mentioned Year 7 subjects, and thus taught or implemented in lessons of that subject. So each of these components will be assigned to one of them, and then within those lessons, I will describe a teaching activity or approach I'd like to take on that then helps open up the activity to global citizenship aspects and mindsets. I've also listed, in addition to the components, the classes, I've also listed an integration strategy from Oxfam, which is effectively a teaching strategy to help spread this component around. Lastly, also I've been quite specific in looking at the disciplines I'll be teaching global citizenship in, and I've chosen from each subject one unit describer or content descriptor, that addresses knowledge that students will be taking on in this unit. This makes it quite specific and means I've been able to tailor the global citizenship components around specific knowledge that students will be taking on and undertaking in this discipline. Okay, so let's move on to my first class. The first subject that I'll be teaching, that I'll be implementing this concept within, which is Year 7 History. So one of the content focuses of Year 7 History is the ancient world. The content descriptor, as you can see there, ACD-SCH 148, focuses on conserving remains of the ancient past, including heritage of Aboriginal/Torres Strait Islander peoples. The global citizenship component I've chosen to focus on for this class, for this discipline, is heritage. And the concept integration strategy that I've chosen to use is exploring viewpoints and values. So in regards to my activities, I've thought of 2 activities that students could do to link heritage with what they're learning about the ancient world. This could be done by using the tools they've gained in looking at one civilization. They look at either Greece, Rome, or Egypt, and then using these tools, which would be investigative skills, research skills, and analytical skills, asking questions and reflecting on what they know. Students can then apply these to a personal project, well, a school project, but a kind of extended project, where they look at a modern state's culture of their choosing. So they examine a modern state's culture and history, and they, using those tools they've gained in looking at either Greece, Rome, or Egypt, they then look into that nation's culture and history, traditions, customs. The second thing that I would like to do would be to have students create a personal family history, which would be another extended project that they then present to the class. And this could take the form of them interviewing family members about their backgrounds, for example, when they first came to Australia, language, history, anything that's culturally interesting, and then presenting this to the class. And I think that this ties in nicely with this content descriptor and what students will be learning, because it links student diversity, which is varied in this class, to what they'll be learning about, which includes how they should conserve remains of the past, including heritage of local Australians as well. So I think that heritage as the global citizenship component here is a good fit for what they'll be studying in this discipline. So moving on to my next discipline, it is geography. And Unit 1 for Year 7, it focuses on water in the world, and the global citizenship component that I've chosen to slot in here would be sustainable development. The concept integration strategy that I've chosen here is to have students make connections. So that is the form of learning I'd like students to take on within this class, within this discipline, and with the complementing global citizenship component. So by having them make connections, it helps students see that their water usage in Australia could have global effects. It makes them think makes them look outside the box regarding how they use everyday facilities that we have in Australia. So the activity that I've chosen would be a consequences wheel activity. This is essentially where students create a sort of mind map, which helps them consider the consequences of an event, action, or issue. So it makes connections between causes and effects, and it can also help students understand the significance of local and global issues. So the issue that they could choose would be water shortages in Australia. And how it works is students put this issue into a large circle, either on some butcher paper, or we do it as a class on the whiteboard. They put that major issue in the middle, so water shortages in Australia, and then they list direct consequences and place those in circles next to it as those are the direct consequences. So for example, one could be people have to cut down on water usage, water becomes more expensive, and they then create more direct consequences of those consequences. The idea is to let students see how every action, every cause has an effect, and then see how that trickles down until it becomes something which is less local and something which is more global. In this instance, water shortages could affect farming activity within Australia, which would then affect our import activities. So that's an example of what students could do in this subject to give it more of a global citizenship aspect and spin. To further this, you could also go through direct consequences students have listed and go through any assumptions they have and about what would happen and see if they're justified. And as a further extension, we could also discuss how they could find out more about the facts that they've listed, the things which they think will happen as a result of these effects. Okay. So the third discipline that I'll be focusing on now would be Year 7 Economies and Business. So this content descriptor of EEG701, it focuses on the way consumers and products interact with each other in the market. And the global citizenship component I've chosen here is globalization and interdependence. So the concept integration strategy I've chosen here would be to have students ask questions. And it sounds simplistic, but asking questions in an educated, critical, and forward-thinking manner, and also a proactive way that gets them really thinking about the activity and just finding out more about, things that they may take for granted knowledge-wise in terms of their daily and local lives, and linking them to bigger and more global pictures. So the activity that I would like to focus on for this global citizenship component would be the World in My Shopping Bag activity. And it's quite a simple one really for this year level though. I think it's quite appropriate as it's a year 7 class. So what I would advise doing would be students would have, as a teacher, you would give students a range of products and goods and display them on a table in front of them in class. For example, these could be coffee, cotton, flowers, oranges, sugar, etc. Let the students all have a look at them and then begin the class by asking them some leading questions. So asking them where they think each item comes from. Are the items made in the same place where they're manufactured? What does it say on the box, on the descriptors? Do they know where the countries that these items are from are listed in the world? And could they show us where they are on an atlas? Okay, so following this, students then get split into pairs and they have to match up the products to the country. And so they're given on a corresponding worksheet symbols of these items. So for example, cocoa, and then they have to cut that out and then place that on a country in South America on an atlas that they have. Okay, so it's really quite a simple activity at the core. It just gets them thinking about where things come from, and as a result, it makes them think about how far away products are, why they might be so expensive or cheap, are they scarce, are they plentiful, and then that would have them thinking about how much Australia and other countries rely on trade and relationships to get necessary products. I find this just to be a really good and simple baseline way to have students think about the way that consumers and products interact with each other in the market. And it really does, at a simple level, again, emphasize that idea of globalization and interdependence. An extension for this activity could be to have them find out 3 further facts about the items on the table, or 3 further facts about the countries where the product was grown. Okay, so that is that's how I would approach integrating and implementing global citizenship within this discipline for a year 7 class. Moving on to a civics and citizenship class. So the content descriptor here, ACHCK052, it focuses on how civic values in Australia help promote cohesion within society. So when we say civic values, we mean things like freedom, respect, inclusion, civility, responsibility, compassion, etc. And how these work to create a generally quite cohesive and peaceful society in the country. So the global citizenship component I'd like to focus on here would be social justice and equity. And the concept integration strategy would be responding as active global citizens. So that is the learning method, the learning means I'd like students to take on to fully grasp this issue. So with me, the activity that I'd like to choose here, this is really an action planning tool that helps students chart progress towards a certain goal. So how it starts is you would select an issue that you'd like to focus on, and then you would show that to students via a video or a news clip. So for example, if you are highlighting, say, social inequality in another country, and we could choose race-focused riots, for example, in France, or the pay gap protest between genders in the US, you would then introduce this issue to the class in the form of a news clip or a video. And then once students are exposed to that, and we've discussed it as a class and what it means for that nation, and what the potential difficulties would be, we would then take part in a river timeline activity, where, as I've mentioned before, they chart progress towards a chosen goal. So how this works is we literally draw the shape of a river on a large sheet of paper, and the river represents the steps towards achieving the goal. So in the case of, say, the pay gap inequality between the sexes in the US, that could be to make pay equal, to have pay equality within the country. Okay, so on the river that they have sketched on their pieces of butcher paper, or again on a whiteboard with the class, this river represents the steps towards achieving that goal in chronological order. So the source of the river is the situation as it is now, and the mouth of the river is the eventual goal, so ending pay inequality. So students can also draw tributaries, sorry, I mispronounced that really badly, but smaller rivers leading, joining the main river, and they represent actions that need to be taken in the appropriate order. So you might have a smaller one that represents the first action they might take, a second one representing the second one, third one, and so on and so forth. Political obstacles, or sorry, I meant to say potential, but they could also be political obstacles, would be things like boulders, waterfalls, etc. So boulders might be things like legal barriers that for some reason prevent both genders getting the same pay, or industry standards, or other issues, things like that. The river can be added to as students make progress towards achieving that goal and mapping it out as a class. And as I mentioned before, I just find this to be a really useful activity that I think you can do it for a local issue, but I think using a river timeline is a great way to link things that they know about in their home country. So, for example, knowledge of the way that civic values operate within Australia to uphold society, they can then take what they know from those, from that system, and then see how, if it's possible, if they can then link that to addressing a wider problem. And thus that's how I would address the global citizenship component for this discipline. The final discipline is the same one actually. It is again civics and citizenship. And the final global citizenship component I'd like to address here is peace and conflict. Fittingly, this goes along with the content descriptor of ACHCK050, which focuses on Australia's legal system and how it aims to provide justice through burden of proof, right to a fair trial, legal representation, etc. The concept integration strategy is again responding as active global citizens. For my activity here, I've chosen to base this component around the think, learn, and act approach. So, by choosing an issue, first of all, I would have students choose an issue of conflict to focus on, or I would choose one as a teacher. So, for example, an issue of poverty, say, in a developing country, which has been offset by bribery issues or problems of war. Again, I would introduce them to a digital means of understanding the issue, so a video or a news clip, as I also find that digital media is a good way to also link kids closer to the idea of what global citizenship is. By introducing them to that issue, say for example, a country that's facing severe poverty issues because of bribery or war and conflict, the thinking part then comes in when students reflect on what they've learnt through either a reflective piece in class or by discussing what they've learnt in that video or skit through leading questions. So that is the thinking part of this activity. Thirdly, when it comes to the acting part, I would have students acting in a concrete, action-orientated way. So by this I mean you could then try to get students galvanized about doing something that raises awareness of the issue in their communities. So whether this is raising awareness within the school or wider community about these issues which are happening overseas, or funding an initiative to help one of these issues get solved, or just smaller kind of like things like that which help raise awareness of the issue. So those are my 5 disciplines that I've chosen to integrate and implement components of global citizenship throughout. And yes, I hope that's been a clear presentation. End of presentation now. I also will upload another presentation with my references at the end of it. But yes, thank you for watching, and I hope this was enjoyable despite the technical difficulties. Thank you.